Hi guys, I'm Flora from Dynamixyz. In this video, we're gonna see how to use 3D Studio Max to create a retargeting profile with Performer. The retargeting is a mandatory step in the Dynamixyz pipeline, whether you want to do offline or real-time animation. The concept is to use the key poses selected during the tracking profile creation and reproduce the poses on the rig. If you haven't created your tracking profile, I invite you to watch our previous tutorials first. To connect 3ds Max with Performer, you're gonna need our bridge plugin, which can be downloaded from our website in the support page. Note that the bridge can also be installed for Maya, Motion Builder and Cinema 4D. In this tutorial, we'll first see how to connect Performer to 3ds Max. We'll start by installing the bridge and setting up the connection between the two software. Then I'll show you how to create a face entity set. This is what will determine which entities will be driven by our system. After that, we'll see how to create retargeting links on the key poses to enrich your retargeting profile in Performer. Then, we'll see how to solve an animation in 3ds Max for those who want to produce offline animations. And finally, I'll show you how to adapt your retargeting profile for real-time using the link transfer option in Performer. Before installing the bridge, make sure that no instance of 3ds Max is running. I'll open the Dynamixyz Bridge installer. I can see in the list the compatible 3D software installed on my computer. Since I am using 3ds Max 2019, I'll make sure that this option is selected before I click on Next. I'll leave the default installation path and click on Next, then Install. This tells me that the installation was successful, so I can now click on Finish to close the installer and open my Max scene. So this is my rig. She has a set of 52 blend shapes, a full body skeleton with 2 bones for the eyes, and 21 controllers. To start the bridge, I'll make sure that my command panel is visible. If not, I can right-click in the top bar and select Command Panel, and then I'll go in the Utilities tab. If you already run the bridge, it should be visible here. Since it is the first time that I'm running it, I will click on More, then select Dynamixyz Bridge in the list and click on OK. You can see that a new box has appeared. I'll click on Open Dynamixyz Bridge and this window pops up. Up here, I can see the IP address of my computer. The Start button will allow me to run the bridge server to which Performer will have to connect. Here, I can set the port number that will be used for the two software to communicate. I'll just leave the default one and click on Start. Now, I need to connect Performer. I opened my Performer project in which I previously created a tracking profile using my actress range of motion. The project contains 42 annotations, which is a good base to start animating. The studio box on the left is where I will set up my connection to the bridge. I'll click on the Network Configuration button to show the settings. I need to indicate the IP address and the port of the bridge server. Since I am running everything on the same computer, and that I used the default port in 3ds Max, I can leave the localhost address and the default port and click on Connect. As you can see, the name of my 3ds scene now appears here above this new panel, and the bridge now indicates that a client is connected. Since the connection was successful, I can now minimize the bridge window and let the server run in background. Be careful to not close the bridge window as it would break the connection. The first step of the retargeting profile creation is to indicate to Performer which scene entities you wish to animate. To do that, we'll create a new face entity set using the plus button. The character face editor will open. The principle is to select the entities from the scene and use the left column of the window to import them in the entity set. Our retargeter divides the face in 3 parts that we call solvers. There's the upper solver for all the entities that trigger upper face movements, such as the eyebrows or eyelids. The gaze solver, which only concerns entities that drive the pupils of the character. And the lower solver, which concerns all the lower face entities, such as the cheeks or the mouth. Each time I'll select a new group of entities, I will have to assign them to one of the solvers. In this entity set, I only want controllers, but I'll show you in the last session of the video how to add bones and blend shapes as well. So I'll go ahead and select my upper controllers, then click on Assign to Upper. As you can see, the selected entities have appeared in the table. So I'll do the same for the gaze controllers, and then the lower controllers. If I want to change the solver I assign to one or more entities, I can select them in the list and use the right column to change the solver, or right-click on the group and use the contextual menu. In some configurations, a fourth solver can be available, which will only accept the head bone. Since my video sequences were shot using a HMC, I do not need the head solver here. To finish, I'll enter a name for my entity set and click on Create. The window has closed. You can see that some face icons have appeared on my session timeline, and that the name of my entity set has appeared on the left. You can have as much entity sets as you want in a project. In fact, one actor can animate multiple characters. You can edit an existing entity set at any time using the Edit button, and you can also import an existing entity set in the project using the Import button. If your entity set appears in red in the list, it means that it's not compatible with the current scene. In that case, you can use the Edit button to check and fix the errors. Now that our entity set has been created, we can create our retargeting links. When Performer is connected to the bridge and that one valid entity set is selected, the retargeting mode will unfreeze. So I'll click on it, and you can see the viewport has changed. On the left, I can navigate between the keyframes to select the one that I want to retarget. It's not mandatory to retarget all the poses. There can be more annotations than retargeting links in a project. For each pose I will select, I will use the controllers in my scene to make my rig match the actress expression. This slider can help you see how the actor moves around the selected frame. So I'll go back to my first frame, which is the neutral one. This will be my reference pose. My character is already standing with a neutral expression, closed lips, gaze looking straight ahead, so there's nothing that I have to change in the scene. You can see down here 3 checkboxes with the solvers we previously talked about. This indicates that for this particular pose, all 3 solvers will be taken into account during the profile training. Since it is the neutral frame, Performer won't let me uncheck the boxes, as it would make no sense. So, to save my pose, I will click on the big Save button. You can see on the miniature that the icon has been filled with the 3 colors. So I'll move on to the next frame. I can click on it or press N on my keyboard. For this pose, I'll use the eyelid controllers to close the eyes. Since I only modified the upper face, I will check only the upper solver before hitting Save. It's important that you understand how to use the solvers checkboxes. Here, I want to indicate to Performer that only the upper face of this pose is important. I could have changed the mouth to make the lips look a bit pressed just like my actress, and in that case, I would have selected the lower solver too. But I chose to ignore the lower part of the face and only focus on the eyes, because I know that there are poses in my project that will have more significant changes on the lower part, so I didn't want to spend time on a subtle movement such as this one. It is up to you to decide which solver you want Performer to take into account and which solver you want to ignore. Now that my link is saved, if I click on the previous frame or press B on my keyboard, you will see that the character goes back to neutral. Then, if I go back to the next one, the character updates. I move on to the next frame. As you can see, my character hasn't updated because this frame doesn't have any value associated with. I can use the Reset button here that will force the character to go back to the neutral expression, then go on building my pose. The other buttons allow you to copy and paste some parts of one pose to another. I've created my 42 retargeting links. Again, you don't have to retarget them all. In fact, to build a retargeting profile, you need at least 4 poses for each solver. But the more poses you retarget, the richer the profile will be. Up here in the toolbar, you can see a small warning on the build icon. This indicates that my retargeting profile is not up to date. So I'll click on it to build the profile. It can take up to 1 or 2 minutes depending on the number of entities in your entity set. At the end of the process, a small window will indicate that the profile was built. From here, you can start using the profile to generate animations or adapt it for live animation, both of which I will show in a few minutes. You can edit your retargeting links and add new poses at any time. You'll just have to hit this button again to rebuild the profile afterwards. I'll go back in the session mode. You can see that the icons have been updated on the timeline where the key poses are located. And this button is now enabled. This is the Solving button. I'll open one of the videos that I previously imported, then click on the Solving button. The settings window will open. You can decide which solvers to export, smooth the results, and simplify the animation curves per solver. I leave that to default and add a bit of smoothing, then click on Solve. This process can take a while depending on the scene. Once the solving is done, I can click on the link button here to synchronize the timelines. Now if I hit play, both sequences will play. You can generate your animation sequences by solving each one of them or let the batch mode process them all. In order to live animate your character in the most popular real-time engines, your profile must not retarget on controllers, which usually cannot be exported from the 3D software. It should retarget on low-level entities such as bones and blend shapes. Fortunately, Performer can adapt a controller-based entity set to a real-time entity set. All you have to do is create the real-time entity set. So I'll go ahead and create a second entity set that I'll name Call Realtime. In 3ds Max, I will first select the two bones I'm using for the gaze. I'll click on Assign to Gaze. Next, I will select the face mesh, which contains the morphers, and choose one solver. Importing blend shapes is always a bit different from controllers, as you cannot import them each by each. So I'll assign the whole group to the lower solver, then adjust the distribution directly in the character face editor. I'll select my upper entities, right-click on them, and select Assign to Upper. Now I can click on Create. As you can see, the second entity set now appears under the first one in the list. Now, we're going to use what we call the Links Transfer tool in Performer. I'll go in the retargeting mode and make sure my controller-based entity set is selected. Up here, I will click on the Create Link Scene button. I don't need to export the miniatures in a folder, so I'll just click on No, then let the process begin. This will export all my retargeting links in 3ds Max. Basically, the 42 first frames of the timeline will now represent my 42 retargeting links. Now that the transfer was successful, if I move my cursor on the timeline, I can check that the poses have been exported in the same order as my miniatures. If you didn't retarget all the poses, then the blank links will be replaced by the neutral pose on the timeline. Now that my links have been exported, I'll select my real-time entity set in Performer, which doesn't have any links associated for now. I'll click on the Import Link Scene button. I will decide to copy the solver's attributions from my controller-based profile onto the real-time profile. This will scan the 3ds Max timeline and get the values associated with my real-time entities. Then, for each frame, it will generate a new retargeting link. Now I have two retargeting profiles, one that retargets on controllers and one that retargets on bones and blend shapes. From here, I can export the real-time profile and live animate my character using our software Grabber. But first, I would like to check my real-time retargeting links to make sure that everything went well. To do this, I cannot use the 3D scene as it is, and that is because the scene still contains controllers that constrain my bones and blend shapes. There are several options here. The quicker one is to delete the controllers from the scene, then check the links. But if the controllers are missing from the scene, you won't be able to modify your first retargeting profile without reloading the scene. My favorite option is to run a second instance of 3ds Max, in which you will import the FBX you want to use in your real-time engine. We will run a second instance of the bridge on a different port. In Performer, I will disconnect from the bridge, then change the port in the network settings and connect to the second bridge. You can see that my first entity set cannot be used with this scene, and that's because the controllers cannot be found. I'll select the real-time entity set and go back in the retargeting mode. Now, if I navigate between the miniatures, I can see my links update. This option makes it easier to go back and forth between your two retargeting profiles. If you need to do some modifications on the controller-based profile, you can still use the first scene and go on with the links transfer, then connect to the second one to check the real-time links. So that's it for this tutorial. To learn how to refine your animations or live animate your character with Grabber, I invite you to watch our dedicated tutorials, which are linked in the description. Thank you for watching this video, and if you have any question, you can reach us at support@dynamixyz.com. Bye!